welcome back to my channel. My name's Joanne and I'm a mum to 3 children, and usually on my channel I talk about home educating those 3 children, but today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. So my daughter is now 4 years old, but when she was 2 years and 4 months, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So prior to her being diagnosed, I was raised with an awareness of type 1 diabetes because my dad and my granddad are both type 1 diabetics. So my granddad was diagnosed in his early 20s with type 1 and he lived to be 70. And then my dad was diagnosed at age 11 and is now, I don't want to age him unnecessarily, I think 66. So he's been living with type 1 diabetes for 55 years. So because of this, I was aware of the symptoms of diabetes and the general management of diabetes, although things have changed a little bit from how my dad typically manages his now. And I'll get into that, I think, in my next video. But today I wanted to share the signs and symptoms that my daughter experienced when she turned diabetic, just to raise awareness really around if anyone experienced these symptoms in themselves or in a loved one. I think we associate diabetes because we use the word diabetes for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, that we often associate someone becoming diabetic with them being overweight or underactive, and that's not the case in type 1 diabetics. Type 1 diabetes can present in anyone. It's an autoimmune disease, so it's where the body attacks the beta cells of the pancreas. And they're not sure why that happens. You can have a gene that predisposes you to diabetes, but they're not sure what triggers it. But in my daughter's case, they suspect it may be a virus. So, on to the story. My daughter was, like I say, 2 years and 4 months when one night she woke up with a high temperature. And, you know, there's nothing abnormal for a young child. We treated her with Calpol. I think she was a bit sick that first night. We were due to go on holiday to my parents' house for a week, so we carried on with our holiday. And the first few days we were there, she spiked her temperature each night and needed some sort of Calpol just to help her through. She had a runny nose, you know, the normal sort of cold symptoms. When her cold cleared, I noticed that she had really increased thirst. So she was drinking a lot more water than normal. But myself and my parents, all being aware of diabetes, were like, well, she's just had a cold. She's probably got a sore throat. It's probably just a sore throat. It's lingering a little bit longer than the other symptoms, and that's why she's drinking to sort of comfort herself. My daughter, I feel like luckily at this time, because this did help me realise what was going on, she, a few months earlier, just after turning 2, had potty trained. And she'd potty trained really successfully. So within about a week of potty training, she was dry. She wasn't having any accidents at all. She potty trained wonderfully compared to my boys. She was my easiest child and my earliest child to potty train. And she just got it like that. And I think that was being around, you know, older kids, and also just children are ready at different times, aren't they? So she'd potty trained really easily, never had an accident at night time. And then suddenly, because of this increased thirst, she was wetting the bed every single night without fail. On top of that, she was also waking up sometimes in the toilet at night. And then she also had a handful of daytime accidents. So like I said, that this was all very out of the ordinary for my daughter. And by the time I got back home, like I say, we were on holiday for a week. So this was towards the end of the week that these symptoms were presenting. By the time we got home, I think all of us, like myself, my parents, my husband, we'd all sort of mentioned like, do you think this could be something more? Do you think she could be diabetic? But we'd all, I mean, I myself I was reasoning it away as no, she's 2 years old, she's not diabetic. My dad turned diabetic, like I say, at 11, my granddad at 20. I'd never heard of a toddler being diabetic. So I was like, no, she's not diabetic. This is just it's just this cold, or, maybe she's picked up a UTI, something like that. That's what I was thinking. So we got to Saturday evening. For whatever reason, this night, my daughter was fast asleep and I couldn't sleep. I was just having one of those evenings. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to grab my dad's glucose monitor out of the cupboard, because he keeps a spare one here. I'm going to grab it out of the cupboard and I'm just going to finger prick her, because once I see a normal number, then I'm not going to be worried for the rest of the weekend. Like, I can just take her to the GP on Monday. And like I say, I was thinking like a virus or a UTI or something like that. So grabbed it out of the cupboard, finger pricked my daughter, and instead of coming up with a number, it came up reading high, but spelled HI. So I was like, oh, that's a little bit odd. Let me finger prick myself, because perhaps the monitor's a bit old, perhaps not reading right. Finger pricked myself, and I was 6 point something. So I was like, well, it's reading on me. So this point, I always know that my dad's up quite late in the evening, so I give him a phone call and I was like, look, I'm trying to finger prick my daughter just to double check that she is okay, because he was aware of these symptoms as well, obviously. I can't get it to read. If you've got any suggestions. It's like, oh yeah, like she might have some sugar, like something sweet on her hands. Like, grab a flannel, wipe her hands, dry them with a towel, and then try. So I did that. I couldn't get it to read. By this point, I'm like, it's really odd that I can get a reading for myself and I can't get one for her. So then I'm trying her feet. I'm doing her toes. I can't get a reading there either. And now my husband's awake. He's aware of what's going on. My eldest son is awake. He's aware of what's going on. So it's like, right, let's Google this making machine and what it means when it just says HI. So I Googled it, and it said a reading saying HI means that your blood sugar's over 30. So I was like, well, that can't be good, right? And like I say, this is Saturday evening, so I don't know why I've left it to Saturday, but I have. I've left it to Saturday evening. I was like, I don't know what to do now. Should I go to A&E or should I wait till the morning? But if I wait till the morning, it's Sunday anyway, so surely like it's just going to be the same as if I go tonight. So I said to my husband, like, if you and the boys stay here, I'll take her to A&E, just get her checked out, because I do think that that's a bit of a high blood sugar. And I was particularly worried because she's young, her body's little. I wanted to have her checked over. So went to A&E, got triaged really quickly. We were really lucky that our local A&E it has its own paediatric section, and so that's we're fast tracked through there. We were triaged. I said to the nurse, like, we've got increased thirst, increased urination, history of diabetes, and I just can't get the blood sugar monitor to read properly. And she took all that seriously, obviously, and put us in a bay. And someone came along with their own blood sugar monitor. So at this point, I was like, well, maybe my one is just wrong for whatever reason. Right? It's been in the cupboard for a long time. The blood strips are old, all of that sort of stuff. So I was still a little bit hopeful at that point that it might just be reading wrong. But the guy who came in, he shook her blood sugar, and I said to him, what's the number? And he said it's 33.3. So at that point, I knew, like, okay, I think this is probably diabetes, right? Because I've heard my dad's diabetes story. I know that that's a high blood sugar. So the doctor came in. She was really nice, and she asked me to tell her what had been going on. And so I said to her, told her all of my daughter's symptoms. And I said, I'm worried that she's diabetic because my dad's diabetic. So she said to me, I think you could be right, but I don't know how much you know about DKA, but that's a pretty serious condition, and we're going to need to get her checked for DKA. So I hadn't heard of DKA at this point, but DKA is it's diabetic ketoacidosis. And it's because your body can't access the sugar that's in your blood, because to do that it needs insulin, your body starts breaking down fat instead. And so that's why one of the symptoms of diabetes, type 1 diabetes, is that someone loses weight. So my daughter had gone from being in the 25th centile, for example, and she'd gone down to the 2nd centile when she was diagnosed. So she'd lost weight because her body was breaking down fat to use as energy. So the doctor explained to me that if when your body does that, it builds up ketones. And if those ketones build up in your blood can become acidic, and then that's a really dangerous complication, basically, of diabetes. So she's like, we need to check your daughter for DKA, and we need to check it now. We haven't got time for the numbing gel to work because the numbing gel takes like 45 minutes, and I'm worried that she could be in DKA already. So she's like, we will take her to another room, we'll hold her down, we'll put in the cannula, and we'll have to take a few vials of blood and send them off immediately. So, of course, we did that, and it was a bit traumatic. Like, my daughter's young, she just, it was painful. But they were sensible in that they took her to a different room, and then they brought us back, and then she had loads of toys and stuff on the ward. So I have to say, the doctors there acted really quickly. Her blood results were back within maybe an hour or so of me getting to the hospital. Like, all of this happened really quickly. My daughter was diagnosed with diabetes within 2 to maybe 3 hours of me taking that initial finger prick at home. And so, the doctor came back with her test results and was like, she's not in DKA, so we can relax. But she is diabetic. The blood tests are confirming that she's diabetic, and so you need to go down to the paediatric ward. So from A&E, we got sent down to the paediatric ward where we stayed the night, and they gave my daughter her first long-term insulin injection. We were also really lucky that night that the endocrinologist was the one on call, so he managed her first injection, and she went from being 33.3, which I should say is about 600, I think. I know that Americans and people in mainland Europe measure a different way to how we do in England. 33.3 in England, and how we measure that is 600 internationally, around 600 was her blood sugar. So that had dropped by the morning from 33.3 to 6 point something. So she was back down to normal by the morning with that long-term injection. Saying that, the first few days that she was in hospital, we didn't know how much to inject her. So the first day we didn't inject her at all because the diabetes team weren't working because it was a Sunday. And then the next day, the Monday and Tuesday, the diabetes nurses started off at, I think, half a unit per meal. And so half a unit of insulin per meal wasn't doing too much to bring her blood sugars down. Yes, sorry, interruptions. So it wasn't doing too much to bring down her blood sugars during the day. We got that more under control once we got home with the support. The diabetes nurses came out to our house as well for the first few weeks. And so we did gradually get it down. It felt like the first week, like, oh, she's always going to be high. But she wasn't. She's not always high. She's fine now. So like I say, this was a couple of years ago, and I do want to make a follow-up video to this, detailing what my daughter's life is like now with her type 1 diabetes. The management of type 1 diabetes has changed quite considerably from when my dad was a child. The advice around eating is a bit different. The technology is different. My daughter has a blood glucose monitor, which is attached to her 24/7. And she had that, I think, she didn't get it on the Sunday. She got it when we met the diabetes team on the Monday. They put it straight on her, so we never have to wonder what her blood sugars are. So she has a continual blood glucose monitor attached to her. She usually wears on her arm or her tummy. And she also has an insulin pump now. We didn't have that for the first year, but the insulin pump and the sensor work together really well to manage her diabetes, particularly at night. Like, we do have to, it's a full-time job, really, managing diabetes. But these things are making it a lot easier. And she is, within reason, able to eat what she likes, which is something else I will touch on in the next video, because unfortunately, as well as having type 1 diabetes, my daughter also has celiac disease, which is another autoimmune disease that they only detected after she became diabetic, because they started testing for other autoimmune diseases, and she, it turns out, has silent celiac. So apart from not being able to eat gluten, she is able to eat cakes and things like that, things that people typically think a diabetic child wouldn't be able to eat. She can eat, but we have to be very careful about injecting the right amount of insulin against that. So I will talk about the management of that in my next video. But I would love to hear from you if you or a loved one is affected by diabetes. Let's talk about it in the comments. That'd be great. It's always great to have a bit of a support network, and I found that as with everything online, you've got a little bit more. There's just more people out there to talk to that are affected by the same sort of things. Anyway, take care. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.